Hi, welcome to Phi Chi Theta's Meet the Brothers Episode 1. My name is Carter Buck, and I'm a sophomore studying finance and minoring in business analytics. Today I'm sitting with Duy Khanh Trinh, a senior studying finance and now in his third year of PCT. Welcome, Duy.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to do this.
So before we get started, just tell me a little bit about yourself. Who is Duy Khanh Trinh?
Yeah, sure. So like you said, I'm a senior majoring in finance. I was born in Vietnam, and I lived there for 3 years before moving to Kobe, Japan. I lived there for around 6 years, and then right before 5th grade, I moved to a small town in Louisiana called Alexandria, and then lived there for 3 years. Then I moved to St. Louis right before 8th grade. I think to this day, I think St. Louis definitely feels the most like home to me. So I went to high school in St. Louis, graduated from there, and then came to Ohio State. And after my freshman year at Ohio State, my parents actually moved to Cincinnati. So now when I go home, I actually go home to Cincinnati. On campus, I'm involved in PCT. PCT is pretty much my main involvement. I was the corporate relations chair in the term before this current one. And then this past summer, I interned at Boeing as a estimating and pricing intern. And then outside of school and work, I'm a pretty big foodie. When I travel, I like researching and finding not necessarily the most trendy or most popular spots, but I really try to find some of the hidden gems in the places we travel to. I'm also a massive soccer fan. I support Chelsea. I'm also a big Marseille fan in the French Ligue 1. I'm also a pretty big F1 fan. I golf a lot. And then lastly, in high school, I played volleyball, and I played club volleyball in high school for 2 years as well. But now, since there's not that much opportunity to play like competitive volleyball, I've taken up running, and running's kind of taken over my life. And yeah, I feel I'm really immersed in the running world.
I actually didn't know you were new to running because you're so good at it. I thought you've been doing that forever.
No, I've actually started running, 2-3 years ago now. So yeah, I'm fairly new, and it's definitely a progression upwards. Like, I was a pretty casual runner at first, but I think this past 2 years, I've really delved deep into the running world and took my training one step up and all that.
Wow, you're putting the rest of us to shame. So what are some of your races you've run?
Yeah, so I've ran 4 half marathons and 1 full marathon. I think the first race I ever ran, which kind of got me into running in the first place, was the Columbus Half Marathon in 2018. I saw my brother-in-law run a full marathon, the Flying Pig, in Cincinnati that same year or 1 year before, and I thought that was super cool. And at that time, I thought the medals look cool, all the gear you get is cool. So I signed up, trained for it, and I ran it, had a good time, and all that. And at that time, I think I definitely wanted to continue running, so I just kept up with it. And then my big goal after the Columbus Marathon, since that's a fall marathon, was that spring I really wanted to run the Flying Pig 3-way, which was a half marathon on the Sunday and then a 5K and a 10K on the Saturday before. So I trained for that, still pretty casual, not running any super fast times, so it was pretty manageable. And some other people in PCT were telling me that they signed up for the Cap City Half Marathon in Columbus here, which was a week before the Flying Pig 3-way that I already signed up for, and I just said screw it and signed up for both. So yeah, I ran the Columbus one with some PCT people, and that was a blast. And then I did the 3-way, and in that 3-way, I remember after doing it, I looked at the overall rankings, because the way the 3-way rankings work was that they combined all 3 of your times from all 3 races. I think I finished 18th out of a couple hundred people, and at that point I kind of just took a step back and was just wow, this is interesting. I didn't know how competitive I could be in this. I think me personally, I'm a pretty competitive person, and I've always had that desire to compete in something after high school and continue competing in a certain sport or event, things like that. And I kind of really thought that running might be it, might be the thing. So after that, signed up for the Columbus Full Marathon, took my training a step up, started training with a group just at the local Fleet Feet store and all that. And then, so I think that went well. I think I learned a lot from that. I don't know, you might get into it a bit later, but I pushed myself hard and sometimes a little too hard, and I don't know. I just learned a lot about having to be patient throughout it all. I ran my fastest half marathon I've ever ran during that training block, which was good, but then got injured, not necessarily too badly, but did get injured right after that half marathon race in the build-up. So, and that inconsistent training led to not what I hoped to have been for my first full marathon. I bonked pretty hard towards the end. I ran the first half in like 1 hour 30 and then ran the second half in like 2 hours and 15 minutes. Not necessarily the splits you want to see, but I learned a lot from it, and I definitely want to get back to the full marathon after coronavirus, or once coronavirus lets it happen, pretty much. But now, during this time, I'm actually training for some time trials. I just want to see like what I can do on the track, running like the 1600 as fast as I can and the 5K on the track. And I actually reached out to some of my friends that run D1 at Mizzou, and they actually, I'm very grateful for this, and they actually kind of took me on and they're coaching me for it. So I get all my training plans from them, and I talk to them a couple times a week just to see how things are going, things like that. And yeah, so excited to see where that leads. I think I'm going to try to do that in December or something like that.
That's great. I do want to save some of the running because, like you said, we are going to get into that in a little bit because I have some deeper questions on that. But then you moved around a ton growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So out of those, did you what was your favorite city? I know you said St. Louis was most at home, but was there one that stood out to you good and one that stood out bad?
So I think let's start with the bad, and like my least favorite is probably Alexandria, Louisiana, just because, you know, that's the first place I lived in the U.S., and my image of what the U.S. was definitely not Alexandria, Louisiana. The only time I visited the U.S. before that was visiting my relatives in San Francisco, which is like a massive city. In Alexandria, the population's like 70,000, and it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, and there's nothing to do. So I think the culture shock hit me pretty hard there. I met some really great people there, people that I talk to sometimes till this day. But yeah, like the people there is what kind of kept me sane. But other than that, the city just had nothing to it. No offense, Alexandria, Louisiana. But I think the coolest place I lived was definitely like Kobe, Japan. I think that's something that you really appreciate once you get out of the U.S. is just how much history is around you. Even in big cities, like, you know, there could be a skyscraper on one block, and literally the next block could be this house or this monument that's been there for hundreds of years. And I think living in Japan, that was just something so cool to me, something that I didn't really truly appreciate until now, like looking back at it. And just being in a totally different culture and getting out of my comfort zone at such a young age where, you know, I really didn't care, honestly. Like there was not much going on in my head that like made me scared of things. I kind of had a very carefree like experience in Japan that I think helped me really grow at such a young age. So yeah, I think coolest is definitely Japan. But like I said earlier, most at home for me is St. Louis. Like, yeah, every time I drive back to St. Louis, I just know where everything is. All my friends are there, and I just feel like I belong there almost.
Okay, and was that the most recent one before Cincy?
Yep. Yeah, most recent one before Cincy.
All right. Well then, also with your Boeing internship, what did you do for them?
So I was on an estimating and pricing team. So the way Boeing works is that they're split up into kind of three smaller companies within the big company. So one is Boeing Commercial Airplanes, which focuses on the production and manufacturing of the planes, the commercial planes. There's one called Boeing Global Services, and one is Boeing Defense and Security, which focuses on, you know, the defense side, and I'm pretty sure all the space stuff is also on BDS. But I was in Boeing Global Services, which handled like the maintenance of airplanes and things like that, selling spare parts to the airlines, or, you know, creating a contract where they pay a sum every 5 or 10 years, and then Boeing kind of handles the replacement of certain parts that need to be replaced, things like that. So I was on an estimating and pricing team in that division. So I got to estimate and price like a lot of parts that related to like the maintenance of the planes and making sure planes still run, even though they're like 10 years old, things like that.
Okay, so was it what you expected, or did it shock you at all?
So Boeing for me is pretty sentimental because from all the traveling I did as a kid, especially living in Japan, I was very fortunate to travel to a lot of cool places. I developed like a passion for airplanes, and like I knew what Boeing was like at a very young age. And when I was 12, I actually got to go to Seattle with my family and visit the Boeing Everett plant. And so, working at Boeing has been a goal of mine for a pretty long time. So this summer, I really wanted to live the dream kind of thing. I think the dream for me was more on the production and manufacturing side. So was it what I expected it would be? I think like knowing the role that I was going into, I think it was probably what I expected it would be. But I do know that there's like a whole side of the company that I haven't truly been able to explore work-wise. And I think if I were to go back to Boeing full-time, I kind of want to end up in that Boeing commercial, the manufacturing side of things. But I think because it was virtual, what I didn't expect was how easy it was to like connect with a lot of different people. So I got to reach out to really like high level kind of people, and they were extremely generous with their time. So I got to really absorb everything they had to say, and it was super cool just talking to someone that had the same passion as you, but is so much more knowledgeable than you, and just like soaking up everything they said. So I think like the day-to-day work and the projects, I think it was kind of what I expected it to be, but kind of the people side, the networking side, and all the intern events that they were still able to put on was surprised me in a very good way. Yeah.
How did they react to going virtual? Were they quick off the line, or was there any lag on what they were instructing you guys to do?
So I think, like proactively speaking, at like the very high level, I think they were pretty proactive with it. I think they had an idea of like what to do. I remember when I accepted my offer, they didn't send me all of the like housing information right away. So I was a little like skeptical about that, and I think I had an idea in my head as well. But they were kind of late to tell us. I think it wasn't until like early May or late April when they told us that it was all virtual. But especially like with everything happening with Boeing, with the grounding of the 737 MAX, and then all that, there was like, personally, I did feel some like uncertainty about whether it was going to happen or not. But I'm very grateful that they stuck by it, and it seems that Boeing's really invested in like the young people, and like the future of the company. Like I know Boeing is going through some hard times, like throughout, like anyone will tell you that at Boeing. But just the commitment they have and the ability and the willingness to fulfill their commitments, and keep their promises is something that I really respected and was pretty impressed with.
So like you said with the 737 MAX, that has obviously captivated headlines for a long time now, and then you said they are struggling. I know their share price is at almost 25% of what it was a year ago, but that's great to hear that they're still staying loyal to their young employees and making sure that you guys are doing everything you can to learn how to keep the company going. But did you ever find that even in estimating and pricing, was the 737 MAX kind of infiltrating your work when I'd assume it really doesn't have that much to do with what you were trying to accomplish?
So it actually did. Like I remember a person on my team was handling like getting the 737 MAX back on, like off the ground, and like the entry into service things. So I guess like directly in my team, we were just focusing on like, getting it ready kind of thing, like what parts it needs to be ready, or if any planes need replacements, things like that. So I didn't deal a lot with like, the high level stuff, like the company image kind of stuff. But it like it was pretty like it affected the overall internship experience for sure. Like the official internship team held a lot of events where they invited a lot of high-level guest speakers come and talk to us, and it was a good thing. Like, they all acknowledged the 737 Max and all of that, and I think they just did a good job of like explaining what we're trying to do now, explaining like what is released like in the media wise, like what information we have, things like that. And like I was pretty fortunate to talk to a lot of pretty high level people just from reaching out, and I like have no doubt in my mind that they're doing everything they can to like make it safe and make it reliable, and just get it back off the ground in a efficient way. Like I remember I was talking to someone and people were saying like, or I think I read somewhere that, you know, are you scared to go on a 737 Max once it gets off the ground? And the person I was talking to said that no one should be scared, because if anything, that's the plane that they spent the most time on in terms of like safety and then things like that. So yeah, I don't know, like I'm pretty biased, but
that's really interesting take on it though, where all their time's on it now.
Exactly.
Chances are it's getting pretty safe. And do you find that it created any sort of camaraderie where you were all in this together now and you want to figure out how to fix a 737 Max, even when it really isn't their only thing on their plate?
I think, yeah, like you just said, I think the big camaraderie is just like the company in general. Like the 737 Max, on top of the share price being low, there were some layoffs, things like that. So it's like, it was really like, I don't know if, like, I guess I could say like it's pretty inspiring just seeing these people like put their heads down and work, even though they may not know if they have a future with the company, you know, and things like that. And I like gain a ton of respect from a ton of the people I talk to just because of that. And they're still doing whatever they can to make the company a better place, even though, like I said, the company is going through a hard time and the future is really uncertain, especially with everything going on. But yeah, I think like the big thing was just, it was great seeing how people within the company reacted to it.
Well, that's always great to hear. Also, now that we heard about the professional side of Duy, tell me a bit about the man beyond the resume. So obviously, all of us that know you, we think running when we think Duy. And I'd like to talk about Elliott Kipchoge, who just broke the 2-hour barrier for the marathon. And just your thoughts on him, his accomplishments, and then we'll get into his shoes in a little bit.
Yeah, so Elliott Kipchoge is just an interesting man, because as transparent as he is on like social media and stuff, he's not super transparent in his training, which, you know, it's not, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but it's just crazy. I just don't understand how he can run that fast without like looking at the workouts he's doing and things like that. So like for me, I'm just very curious about him in general. But like with the record, like he is far and beyond what his competitors are in running, and it's just absolutely crazy. I think like Kenenisa Bekele is the only person that kind of goes in that same tier as him. But like if we were to make a tier list, like Kipchoge would really be in his own tier. Like it's absolutely insane how much he like dusts his opponent. So as for like the breaking the 2-hour record thing, like I think that's a super cool thing to do. Like it's insane. The pace he was running was like 4:25 mile pace for 26.2 miles. I know there was some controversy about that with his shoes and things like that, but at the end of the day, because he used pace setters, he ran on a course that was designed like for him to do that. And not only that, the day, like, they didn't plan the day it happened until like 2 days before. Like they blocked out like a whole week and they picked the best day, temperature wise, wind wise, to do it. So I think him doing that was just to do it, you know. It wasn't really like to get the record or anything. It was more to prove that it was possible, and it was to more show that like how far you can push your body and how far you can push the limit, things like that. So I think that's like super cool. And not only that, he has the official record as well, 2:01:39, which he ran in Berlin last year, I believe. But yeah, like, yeah, he's obviously like one of the most predominant figures in running. And And as a runner, I'm just very curious. Like, I really want to know, like, what his training style is like, because it seems super pure, you know? I think, like, if you read up about him, he started running, like, by running to school every day in Ethiopia and things like that. And I think when I look at runners in the U.S., pro runners in the U.S. compared to, like, pro runners in Africa, Africa just has that side of, like, purity of how they started running, things like that. It's just so, like, embedded in them. While in the U.S., I personally, like, don't know, like, I definitely know a bit about running, but I don't know everything. But it just seems like you kind of have to get training, get coaching at a young age, and it's a bit more, like, money relevant. While in Africa, you know, they're doing it to survive almost. It's just pure. It just seems more pure, things like that.
Mm-hmm. So on the topic of purity, another source of contention after the record was his shoes, which, what are they called again? The Vapor Flies?
Yeah, he had on the Alpha Flies.
Alpha Flies. So the Alpha Flies have been deemed illegal on the track, correct?
Yep.
And then he also had pace setters, which makes it unofficial, and of course the course and the weather, like you mentioned. So would you say that kind of breaks the purity of what running is? And in reality, did he really even beat that 2 hours in a pure sense of what is running?
That's a good question. Like, I think for what he was trying to do, I don't think it really affects, like, his mission on that day. What he was trying to do, like, he just wanted to show that it was, like, humanly possible to do it. But in terms of, like, you know, the Alpha Fly being more prevalent, more common in professional running, I think that's definitely something that, you know, it is pretty controversial, especially in...
Could you explain why that shoe is illegal?
Yeah, sure. So, well, that shoe is illegal on the track.
On the track, yeah. Yes, on the track.
So that shoe, the big controversy around that shoe is that, you know, decades ago, the ideal marathon shoe was something light, something that gave the runner, like, a good sense of just, like, the barefoot feel. They wanted something weightless and something that they can move quick in. But as, like, technology progressed, things like that, the big, like, game changer was the Nike 4%, which incorporated a carbon fiber plate in the shoe, and with that, it kind of helped with, like, the energy return, things like that. And on top of that, because the carbon fiber plate was so light, they were able to add a ton of foam without making it too heavy. So it was light, it was foam heavy, which helped with the cushioning. I mean, your feet are taking a beating running that far. And in addition, you have that carbon fiber plate, which helps with the energy return. So you pretty much have to work less to run. And so that was, like, the big shoe that changed it all for everything. And then after that, they released the next %. And finally, like, they have the Alpha Flies. So, like, in my opinion, technology is just going to get better and better. And world records are meant, in my opinion, world records are, like, meant to be broken. Like, as technology develops and as time goes on, they should keep getting faster and faster, things like that. Although I do understand kind of the absurdity of wearing one of those on the track, which is where it's banned. There's, like, a lot of stuff going on the track, and the track is not, like, a very spacious kind of thing. You're colliding, like, people bump elbows, things like that, so it could pose, like, a safety kind of thing. And I think it is just kind of ridiculous to, like, wear that on the track, even though I know, like, Gwen Jorgensen, she had a pair of the 4% spiked up just so she could, like, use it on the track, which I think it does just give, like, a kind of unreasonable advantage. But who knows? I don't think that's really set in stone, and that could change. It's just, like, you know, the track is so classically, like, you wear spikes and kind of thing. However, like, marathon running, where it's not banned, although they did place a limit, like, that stack height of the current Alpha Flies is, like, the max stack height that can be done. So they can make, like, new versions of the shoe, but they can't add, like, stack height to it and things like that. I'm all for like using that shoe and having that shoe legal for road races and things like that. Because kind of like I said, I'm pretty progressive in the running world, and I like seeing fast people run even faster and things like that. I think that's cool. But kind of circling back to like, does that affect what Kipchoge did? I don't think so, because like I said, I think he was just trying to prove that it was like humanly possible, and just see like, I mean, wearing that shoe or not, running 4:25 pace for 26.2 miles is not easy. So like, sure, that shoe definitely helped him, but I mean, just the accomplishment itself is still like insanely impressive.
Yeah, I mean, the average person couldn't even run that pace for 2 minutes. He
Right.
did it for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And then also beyond running, so what else? What else do we know about you?
I'm a big foodie. I mentioned that.
Oh yes, big foodie. So am I.
Okay.
This is always an interesting one. What are some weird foods you've eaten?
Weird foods I've eaten.
And if it's local, where? So that people can go try it out.
I don't think anything local, unfortunately. But what pops in my head is in Hanoi, Vietnam, there's this little district that, this little area, I guess, that's kind of known for its snake restaurants. And I knew, like, growing up, I watched a lot of, like, Anthony Bourdain and stuff like that. So, I'm familiar with all these, quote-unquote, like, bizarre foods. But I definitely want to, like, try snake out. So my dad and I, and then, like, a family friend and his family, we all went, and then the experience itself was pretty interesting. Like, you got to pick what snake you wanted, and it was killed right in front of you, and then, like, the blood was put into, like, a shot of vodka, and then, like, the bile was also put into a shot of vodka, which I did not try either. And then with that snake, they took the meat and took the different parts of the snake and then made like a few dishes, few courses from it. So I think that experience in general was like pretty interesting, and the snake itself like tasted fine. It tasted good. I think it was just like the uniqueness of the dish itself was what was interesting. But I mean, besides that, like, I've tried silkworms before. I've tried like pâté foie gras.
What's that?
Pâté foie gras is pretty much like you take a liver. It's usually like the duck liver, or not duck. It's usually the geese liver, and then it gets blended into like a paste with like a ton of butter and a ton of herbs, and you pretty much eat it as a spread, and things like that. And I think like one kind of bizarre dish, but not really, that like I like and like I always get at restaurants, is like beef tartare, which is pretty much raw beef, kind of mixed with herbs and sometimes like an egg yolk and things like that, and you put it on like a slice of bread, and it is so good. I love that. So every time I have the opportunity to order beef tartare, I definitely take it.
Well, you weren't kidding on weird. And then I know you mentioned podcasts, so give us your current podcast binge. What do you want?
So, as a runner, I listen to a lot of running podcasts. So Mario Fraioli, he's kind of a runner coach, along that line. But he has a podcast where he kind of brings in guests of the running world, D1 athletes, pro athletes, things like that. And he interviews them, and it's kind of like a, more like share their knowledge, share their experience kind of thing, and that's super interesting to me. I mean, other than that, like, I watched a Chernobyl series recently on HBO, and that was like a really good series. So I've been listening to the podcast that actually accompanies that, hosted by Peter Sagal. That's a pretty good one. Once fantasy football season kind of starts, I listen to the fantasy footballers pretty religiously.
You know who your first pick is yet?
Not yet. Yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty like, I've been following it, but I don't decide things like that until pretty last minute, just to see how things go. I don't want to like set myself up and then just have it be like, I don't know, things just don't go to plan, and then have to be a bit more reactionary. But yeah, I don't know. I'm a pretty big fantasy football player, mostly because all my friends are big fantasy football players as well, and they're super competitive, and all that. But yeah, that's pretty much like all the podcasts I listen to.
Do you guys put a loser's punishment on your fantasy league?
Yeah, we do. The league I have with my friends in St. Louis, we have some pretty big punishments. I think one season we threw tomatoes, like canned tomatoes, at the loser. What else? I think this past season, the loser got shot with a paintball gun by all of us. And there's one punishment that we've thought of, but we've yet to implement just because of the current situation, is that we want the loser to rent an instrument, and they get like 2 days to learn to play it as best as they can. And then on that third day, they have to go to Ballpark Village, which is where like the Cardinals Stadium, Busch Stadium is, around there. They have to play it like when everyone's kind of walking around the stadium, or walking around the stadium and waiting to enter. And they can't ask for tips. All they can have is just like a sign that says like I'm not asking for money. I just suck at fantasy football.
I like it. I love the public ones.
Yeah.
I heard of one where they had to carry around a smaller, or a piece of fruit, and it started like a grape. And then if one of the guys in the league saw them and broke the grape, they had to go to a bigger fruit every day. And this piece of fruit had to be with them constantly. So eventually you get to a watermelon or something. You're walking to class carrying a watermelon with you.
That's hilarious.
And you do that for a month.
Yeah. Maybe we should. I'll think about that.
Yeah, add that to the list. All right, well, before we wrap up, I have some quick fire questions for you. So up first we have, what song do you secretly jam out to?
Okay, so a guilty pleasure of mine in music is that I'm actually pretty big into like UK like hip hop, UK rap. So I don't know if you know who Skepta is. Like Drake has Skepta featured in some of his songs, but Skepta is like one of the big grime, is that genre is what it's called, big grime artists. So Shut Down by Skepta is a really good song, and that song definitely gets me hyped.
Okay, we'll have to check it out soon. And then up next we have, you have the power to fly, but you lose the power to walk. So you either run or fly everywhere you go. Would you do it?
No. Oh, lose the power to walk.
You can't walk. You have to like sprint
so you have to
or fly.
Wow.
So, I probably walk into class. You have to like hover at like 2 feet.
Yeah. No, I probably wouldn't pick flying. I'd just stick to running.
I'd have to turn it down too. All right, and then up next we have, is there anything you can't do that the average person can? So an example is like, can you not ride a bike or something like that?
So I've been told that I pronounce some words weirdly. So I like, in Carter, we're in your dorm, and I'm staring at a drawer. Although that took some of me to like say that, because I usually say drawer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And things like that. I don't know. Maybe it's just learning English in Japan. I just kind of, I don't know. I know, like, it's just stuff that I guess if you like were raised in the U.S., you don't really think about. I've been told that I say won really weirdly, because like I won something, while like apparently it's one. Yeah. Like the number one. So just like little things like that sometimes, like, my friends usually point me out on it, and they're just
that's interesting. I never even noticed that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then up next, everyone on PCT generally knows each other really well, but what's something that none of us know about you?
So something that I guess not many people in PCT know, but I guess if you talked to me recently, you would know that I'm a pretty big F1 fan. I think like one time I was just hanging out with my sister and some of her friends, and they're all engineers, so like they love this stuff, and they had on an F1 race, and they were kind of like, they were talking me through it, explaining to me how it worked, and I've been kind of following it ever since. And yeah, like I really like F1, just the science behind the cars, and there's like regulations, but then all these teams try to like push the cars to like scientifically like to its max, and seeing how that works and things like that, and all the different drivers and all the different tracks and things like that. That's something that I definitely say that I'm a recent F1 fan, but I don't know, I've watched every race for a while, like, and for the past couple of months now, and I don't know, it's just something that not a lot of people know about, not a lot of people like in the US, I'd say, but it's something that's super intriguing to me, and I don't know, I don't really get bored watching it either, so I find it super interesting. Yeah.
That's neat. All right, and last question. If you could teach a class, what would it be on? It doesn't have to be school related, just a class on any topic. What would you teach?
So this may be a boring answer, but I'd probably teach running, because I think people have this image and idea of running that that it's almost like a negative thing, you know, people dread to run. But especially having like ran for a while and then looking at different training plans and then like talking to different people, it's that idea of like when you go on your runs every day, you're really running to, this person I know likes to say this, you're running to improve your fitness, not necessarily prove your fitness. So if you just go out and run as hard as you can every day, you can only sustain that for a certain amount before, you know, your body crashes, your body needs to recover, and things like that. So the way like Elliott Kipchoge, for example, going back to that, some of his easy runs, he runs as like at a 8-minute pace, sometimes 9-minute pace.
Really?
Yeah, and that's because that's what you're supposed to do on easy runs. It's just, you know, building on that aerobic system, and just building like a good base, and you're pretty much at that point at like marathon running, you're getting your body used to like feeling tired, but you don't want to push it too hard. So like, you know, what I do now, like most of my days I run on what is an easy pace for me, like a conversational pace, something that if I had someone running with me, I would be able to like talk to them, things like that. And, you know, just having that mindset of running easy on easy days so that you can run hard on harder days. Like today, I did a speed workout that required me to like run pretty fast. And with that, you're able to have a sense of being able to like control the pain that comes with running. A term that gets thrown around a lot in running is that like comfortable, uncomfortable feeling. So it's just managing that uncomfortable feeling. And with that, you really get to experience like how far you can push your body. Because the pace that you run in races is not the pace that you run on your everyday runs and things like that. So I think if people know about that, their idea of running can really change and their perspective of running can really change. And yeah, so I think that's like something that a lot of runners, just like new runners, don't really know, but that's something that I really want to like get the message out to everybody, that running is just this completely extraordinary thing that you may not know about.
Well, that's a great way of putting it. Thank you. And then before we wrap up, I just want to hear some of your thoughts on PCT and your experience. So why should someone rush PCT this fall? And then also, how has PCT impacted your college experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I personally rush PCT for the social aspect. I think like on the professionalism side, like PCT helped me grow a ton, but I think when I joined, I definitely had like an idea and I was kind of on top of it, and I had a lot of resources professionally already. So I joined PCT definitely for the social side. If I'm going to be honest, freshman year for me was pretty lonely, but that all changed when I joined PCT and I found like my family at Ohio State. When I joined PCT, the spring of my freshman year, when I really found my family at Ohio State. And since then, PCT has really given me everything I hoped for and even more. I think just having that support system of like 80 to 100 people, depending on the semester, of just people that know who you are, who is always willing to help you, you know, just having that many people have your back, going through college and doing whatever you do, is just immense. That's not to say like, you know, you don't have to be like super close with everyone, but everyone has that mutual feeling of like supporting each other, and that is just so like probably the most valuable thing for me just throughout my college experience. And then PCT has given me some of my closest friends that honestly friends that when I joined, I didn't think I would be super close with, but now like I've driven all the way to Chicago to see them and things like that, and you know, I'd go to great lengths just to support them as well. So I think, why would anyone join PCT? Just for the brotherhood of it, just to have that support system, and also just to find, like, if you're feeling lonely or you ever feel like you need something, need to be around people, PCT is it. Like, PCT is the solution for that, for sure.
I can definitely confirm that. I've never met a group of people so willing to go out of their way to make your life easier, and it's not for a benefit of their own. It's just because we all love each other, and it's definitely been great that way. So thank you for that. And then thank you for joining me today. It was great to have you, and I really enjoyed it. And to all of the listeners, thank you for stopping by Phi Chi Theta's Meet the Brothers Episode 1 with Duy Khanh Trinh.